Robert, how are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good. Things are while you're getting set up with the producers, things are just happening in the background. I There's a lot. Like just now, we know the threats that Trump made. Iran's responded. They announced the closure of all schools and universities until further notice, and they said the following quote: "Iran will not open the Strait of Hormuz and has refused to respond to yet another American ceasefire proposal," according to the Wall Street Journal. And that comes after Trump made pretty significant threats and then opened the door for off ramps for Iran. But I just feel like the threat, for anyone that hasn't read the post, he said Tuesday will be a power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. I just feel like Trump got into this war expecting a quick Venezuela-like operation. Iran exceeded expectations with their willingness to fight on, with the resilience of the regime and their military capabilities as well. Now, Trump wants the war to end, and you might disagree with my analysis. Trump wants the war to end. He's someone that fought against wars and trying to become the peace president. But Iran, they feel they're in a stronger position. I actually agree strategically. They're in a stronger position than one would have expected with the control of the Strait of Hormuz and their ability, according to CNN, half of their missile launchers are still functioning. And you're in Tel Aviv, you see the amount of damage they're causing on a daily basis. I was just speaking to an analyst in the UAE. He's telling me about the daily explosions they have there. I live in the UAE, which shows Iran's capabilities to keep causing havoc remain not intact, but remain a threat. So putting all this together, it just feels like I feel if I had to conclude, I'd say the following. I said Trump made a mistake starting this war, and Iran is making a mistake not ending this war.
I think that, from the Iranian position here, they're looking at the landscape a little bit and they know that the clock is in their favor from the standpoint that the longer this goes, the more their advantage is won. We just had a conversation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky just 2 days ago, having an exclusive interview with him. And I was surprised at how outspoken he was, in which he said the United States needs to end this thing as quickly as possible. And there's a couple of reasons that he gave for that. One of them is that the math gets tricky for the United States at a certain point because of production capabilities for developing interceptors, air defense systems, compared to the amount of drones and missiles that Iran has in their disposal. And
Yeah.
I mean, standing here in Tel Aviv, it's a surprise to everyone on the ground in Israel that there are still alerts here. I emphasize that Israel is knocking down about 90% of the stuff that is coming into their airspace, but they're still able to touch the airspace. We've been hearing since the beginning of the war that 90% of launch capabilities have been destroyed. Uh, the far majority of people on the ground here in Israel don't really give that number credence, because they're not seeing that number play out. And then there's one other element here. You pointed out the Strait of Hormuz. This is about to get worse before it gets better. With the International Energy Agency saying that, in March, the effects of the Strait of Hormuz were not wholly felt around the world because you still had some of these wares that were still on ships that were making their way to port. April, that's a different ball game in which they think that the full impact is really going to be felt in Europe in particular
Yeah.
in the next couple of weeks.
Because it takes
So,
it takes a long time, weeks and months for these ships to. So a lot of these
yeah,
countries are still receiving the shipments that were sent even before the war because they move as slow as a bicycle, so
exactly.
they take a long time to get to the countries. The countries that are starting to feel it, I think, are in Africa, the southern part, in all of
Yes.
Africa, because they're the ones that arrive about now and they're not arriving. Like the last shipment has arrived in the last few days, so they're starting to feel the impact. But the rest of the world is still waiting, not received, waiting for the shipments that were sent before the war. So
Exactly.
once they get those, they're screwed.
Yeah, it's a different ball game, and then it's like it's really, the pinch is really going to be felt. And according to the International Energy Agency, like jet fuel is a big one that they're really monitoring closely over the next couple of weeks. So, from Iran's position, they got a big PR win this weekend. Shooting down an F-15, and it seems as though that the final calculations are still out on any other aircraft that they may have taken out, or are a loss for the United States with these rescue operations. But I mean, this is a win for Iran over this weekend that they were able to shoot down a jet, as the Pentagon has said that they have aerial superiority over Iran.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously there's a conversation happening behind the scenes, but exactly how much pressure is Iran under is a big question, as we come out of this weekend.
They're gambling. They are gambling with the world's most powerful military, and a strong ally, Israel, because the gamble could pay off. I'm talking pure strategy here, putting political affiliations, etc., aside. The gamble could pay off because they do have the upper hand with the Strait of Hormuz, and the low munitions, the air defense munitions on the Israeli side, the American side, the Gulf side, etc. We don't know what they are, but they're on the low end. They were on the low end. You just spoke to Zelensky. I'd love to watch that interview when it comes out. But these discussions were happening even throughout the war in Ukraine, that all the air defense munitions that the US was sending to Ukraine were depleting storage, were the stockpiles. And now we add this Iran war, which is a whole other level, makes the problem a lot more severe. So you put that along with the Strait of Hormuz, they are in a very strong position. And then you also add that to the political ramifications this is having on Trump. Now, I'm not sure if they're thinking strategically. It is an ideological regime. So maybe it's just vengeance for them. You just killed their leader, killed his family, killed a lot of Iranian. A lot of these regime fighters have lost their commanders, have lost their colleagues, etc. So they could be just fighting this war for vengeance. Or they could be more calculated, which I think they are. The Iranian people, as a people, they're very smart people. And so they could be thinking of this strategically, say, look, if we just hang on another week, another 2 weeks, then we could get a lot more concessions, a lot more reparations, the sanctions lifted, or maybe behind the scenes negotiations, the requests on the Iranian side, which include long-term security guarantees and lifting of sanctions, which I think are fair requests, to be clear, if they reciprocate by no more enriched uranium, and offering security guarantees to their neighbors as well. That gamble could pay off, but it could backfire, because my post just a few minutes ago, before we started this interview, I made a tweet. I said Trump made a big mistake starting this war, and Iran is making a mistake not accepting to end this war, because the alternative, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, Robert, is the US could just decimate the Iranian infrastructure, and Iran as a country would be heartbreaking to see. But it's the reality.
It's quite possible. Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. I mean, especially, when you look at some of the posts that the president has made today, prepared to go after infrastructure here. You've even heard from Iran side itself that would be borderline. That would be borderline irreparable inside of Iran in order to cut down the lifelines of that. What I would say is that, it does seem as though you've had a dynamic here in which, it says, like, let's talk about the word victory for a second. There's two different definitions of victory here, depending on who you're talking about. For the side of the United States, there are these stated objectives, vague, by the White House's own design, but stated objectives of decimating nuclear capabilities, ballistic missile capabilities, stopping Iran from funding militias that are around the region. That's the idea of victory for the United States. For Iran, they're now in a dynamic where victory is surviving. If they get to the other side of this, and the regime is still intact, and they're able to live to fight another day in some capacity, that's their idea of victory at this point. So you have an unlevel playing field, as to exactly what success looks like. And again, the longer that this goes, the most ideal situation for the White House was that this was a clean, easy 2-week situation, but it's getting longer and longer. Yeah. And that was part of my conversation with Zelensky, is which he said, look, once it hits a month, which we're already at, once it hits a month, all of a sudden it can accidentally become 6 months. It can accidentally become the big war. It's no longer a quick and clean operation. So, that's the risk, that the United States has.
Did you ask him to comment? I want to get your more thoughts on Zelensky, because he's visiting Syria now. He was just in the Gulf doing defense deals. Did you ask him about the Russian support for Iran? How big of a role that is playing? Could Iran? My question more broadly would be, which I don't know if you can ask him that directly, but is Iran becoming more like Ukraine, a proxy for China and Russia to weaken the US? That is my concern.
We had heard these hunches, right? That it's no mystery that Russia and Iran have a relationship, right? And Shahed drones, this Iranian conception, is what's raining down on Kyiv every single night. I mean, now Russia has the ability to produce their own Shahed drones. But I asked him, I mean, do you believe that Iran is Russia providing Iran support, that is killing or putting in harm's way American troops? And he was saying that, Ukrainian intelligence suggests that Russia has taken satellite images of every single U.S. base in the Gulf, and not just once, but I mean, he said in many of these cases 3 times. And the way that he described it is, when Russian satellites take images of Ukrainian sites, the first time is research, the second time is planning, and the third time means imminent attack. So this is all based off of Ukrainian intelligence, so take that as you will. But I mean, it seemed very clear that there's very evident support from his perspective that Russia is providing to Iran. Then you have the other question as well, weaponry. I mean, what's going to Iran now? And that seems to be a little bit hazier onto exactly if Russia is rearming Iran in the midst of all of this. But it does beg a question because, I mean, shooting down this F-15, for example, I mean, it's a big surprise to most of us that Iran still had that capability this deep into this.
Like my next post I'll post after this interviews, I'll post is like this: Iran's rejection of Trump's ceasefire right now is a reminder of why I hate the regime so much. Like, I empathize with them. They were not the ones to start this war. As much as I despise the regime, they didn't start this war. Trump didn't need to start this war, but he decided to do a quick operation to try to get some concessions.
Right.
Fine. He gambled. It didn't pay off. But just take the freaking off-ramp. But going back to your point, again, you've interviewed Zelensky. You've been covering the Ukraine war for a long time. Where do you see this heading?
So we've got this collision course for Tuesday, right, in which it seems as though something's going to happen or it isn't. And I mean, these deadlines have been very malleable over the last couple of days, right? I mean, we went from, an extra 10 days to it being April 6th. Now that it's a Tuesday night deadline, it's April 7th. It definitely seems as though that we're hitting this collision course here.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for me to look in this crystal ball and see exactly how these negotiations are going on behind the scenes. It's very clear that there is dialogue that is going on between Tehran and Washington, more than likely indirect, but there is some kind of dialogue that is taking place here. I mean, I'm looking at this coming out of this weekend that Iran probably had, I mean, despite the fact that they have been pounded over the last couple of weeks, and they have been pounded by Israel and the United States. They are coming off of one of their best PR weeks yet, with downing an F-15, and they look as though that they're in the advantage seat. And it's like, I also look at the Israeli public here, and the Israeli public is so overwhelmingly behind this war continuing on. There's public surveys that are done here that put the number at like 80%. And I buy that, just from being out and about in Tel Aviv. I buy it that, that you're talking about that level of support here. I mean, it stands to reason that, I mean, everyone here is talking months, and I mean, that's where my knee-jerk reaction goes.
The mindset in Israel is crazy. Like after all the years they've been through, whatever you think of them, and I'm very critical of a lot of aspects of what they did. Gaza is just heartbreaking to me. What happening in Lebanon now. Not before, but now, in South Lebanon, destruction of the houses like Gaza. I despise the law that was passed, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir. I hate that loud minority in Israel. But putting that aside, the fact that the consensus, including the moderates, want this war to continue, it just shows how, because for them, Iran is a threat. It's very different to the US.
Yeah.
For them, Iran is a genuine threat. It's a country, a massive country with a massive stockpile of missiles. And Israel, as that small country, has been fighting wars with the Arab world and regional countries for decades, fighting for its survival. In some cases, the aggressor, in other cases, the victim. But in general, they're fighting for their survival and have that massive country above them that is a genuine threat. So I understand Israel's position. Trump is a very different position. That's not a war he needed to be in. It's just a war that tried to get another win under his belt after Venezuela. But if you'd made a good point, Iran just coming out of a big propaganda win, a big PR win for them. But if they don't accept a ceasefire now, and Trump goes ahead and starts bombing the hell out of them, starts with, and it starts through an escalation ladder, as you'd expect.
Mhm.
Probably will go in very hard so they fold, or just start slowly escalating. We don't know what discussions are happening behind the scenes. What do you think the likelihood this does become a prolonged conflict? This does become a Ukraine 2.0, Iraq, Afghanistan 2.0?
I mean, so here's the thing that I would say to that. I mean, the conversations, about starting or not starting Operation Epic Fury are different than the conversations around concluding Operation Epic Fury, right? I mean, you've already started this thing. And Iran has demonstrated that they do have capabilities, and they have even more so capabilities. They have shown a willingness to put into their crosshairs every single one of these countries that's around the Gulf states. I mean, this is viewed in the Gulf states as no longer collateral damage, spillover of a conflict. I mean, they have blatantly targeted energy infrastructure across the Gulf at this point.
Desalination plants as well. When
Yeah,
their water plants got hit, Kuwait was struck like a mofo yesterday. Got struck really hard.
yeah.
The energy infrastructure. No one talked about it because the rescue operation, Kuwait's energy infrastructure got hit really hard yesterday. It's the big warning shot.
Huge. And I mean, it's not just Kuwait. I mean, 2 sites in Bahrain. Let me look at my notes. 2 sites in Bahrain, one in the UAE. I think that one was from debris, officials there said. And then you had the one in Kuwait as well. I mean, and that's coming off of the heels of energy sites in Iraq, and energy sites, I mean, all around the region. And Saudi Arabia has been put in the crosshairs as well. So, bottom line, there's not just a capability that still exists in Iran in order to hit all these sites, but also an unabashed willingness to do it.
Yeah.
So if you're the United States right now and you walk away from this, I mean, you have said that your stated objectives are to take out these capabilities. I mean, if you walk away today, unless that's part of the negotiation, like the total dismantling of ballistic missile and drone programs, I mean, if you let Iran get to the other side of that, I mean, you have not hit that stated objective from the White House.
But you can't.
That's
But
where this
Robert,
gets tricky.
I know. So me and you always try to be as in the middle as possible. Interviewing different
Mhm.
political figures and stuff. But our job, and you much longer than I, of course. Your job is to always try to be in the middle, try to see both sides.
Right.
But just ask you personally, like, where do you stand on this? Do you genuinely think that there's any like? Do you think Iran's ballistic missile program should be completely dismantled? My stance is that's their only deterrence against another war. They've just been through 3 wars, technically 3, but realistically 2, since October 7th, and sanctions for decades. Would you agree? Like, I think their nuclear program should be completely dismantled. That's 100% right. Their proxy network should be dismantled or weakened. But their ballistic missile program, I think it's unrealistic to ask them to dismantle this. If that's a policy, if that's a request that is non-negotiable, they're going to fight till the end. You can't take away their only deterrent left for another war.
Yeah, and that's a tricky element of this, right? Because I mean, Iran is a sovereign state, and it's just like every sovereign state has a right to national defense, according to the United Nations. I mean, I don't really know, how this is going to go with the negotiators behind the scenes, and it's a little hard for me to weigh in on that. I tried to steer clear of that, but what I would say is that, I mean, if you have set the objectives, I mean, just looking at the goalposts here of these operations, this is the tricky part, that I see for the White House is how do you hit those objectives and still get to the off ramp? If your adversary thinks that they're not necessarily losing, the way that you may have hoped that they would. That's kind of the tricky part for me here. So I mean, to answer your question, about how long do I think that this could go on? I mean, there is a push. The reason that there is such a push from the Israeli public in order for this to continue going is because their hope is that this is the ball game. Their hope is that this is the last one that you have here in this region. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but there are people who genuinely, for the first time on the ground here, believe if Israel and the United States go all the way here, you don't have the threats from the Houthis. You don't have the threats from Hezbollah. You don't have any more of the proxy groups in Syria and Iraq threatening the region, and that finally there's an opportunity for stability in the region. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that is the sentiment on the ground here, which is why I see such a drive on the ground here in Israel to keep going.
By the way, you see me keep looking down because the news just keeps flowing in just now. It's only bad. It's only bad. Breaking from the Wall Street Journal, Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan are trying to convince Iran to engage in peace talks, but Iran has declined to meet with U.S. officials.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, if that's the case, and it's like the Wall Street Journal, has done some really excellent reporting on this whole operation since the very beginning here. What is happening in the public and what is happening behind closed doors? I do think that there's something important to note about Iran here is that Iran carries this position on the geopolitical stage, which is to resist the United States and to be defiant to the United States every step of the way. So, I mean, unless there's a way to get this done through the mediators here, it actually doesn't surprise me that you're not having these face-to-face meetings, because I just remember those talks in Oman and how it took a long time until, the foreign minister of Iran and Witkoff, even got to that level. I mean, there was so much indirect negotiating that was taking place in Oman as well. So it's always going to be difficult, I would say, in order to get them to the negotiating table together face to face. That being said, I think that's where it's going to need to get to in order to get a deal done here.
When? How long do you think it will take? Do you think you're hinting that you believe this is going to become a prolonged war based on how things stand?
Again, I'm standing in Israel right now. So, I'm hearing the perspective of everyone who is here, but everyone here keeps saying months. Now, I will give this caveat, is that I was here for the 12-day war last year. And I remember sitting in a bomb shelter as we were getting shelled by Iran on day 12 of the 12-day war, sitting around all of these Israelis, and they were saying, this is going to go on for months. I'm not going to be able to send my kid to school. This is the big war here. And as we were walking out of the bomb shelter, we got the Truth Social post that said it was over, basically. And so it's just like, okay, maybe we don't know, maybe the perspective on the ground, doesn't fill in all the blanks, right? So there are cogs that are turning behind the scenes here, and and as much as we're hounding in the public sphere, there can always be a curveball that comes out of nowhere, like we were thrown last year during the 12 days war.
Have you spoken to many in the Gulf about this?
Yeah. And what I would say, it is a mixed bag, right? But from some of the folks who I speak with in the Gulf, they are very upset, that this has really brought them in to the fold here. That they were not expecting, people, were in Qatar were not expecting that this would be impacting their day-to-day so much, that they would not be seeing these energy sites that were being hit so often here. And people don't like the fact that again, I go back to capability and willingness is sitting right across the Persian Gulf from them. And you've heard it from Qatar publicly that they're going to have to find a way in order to coexist with Iran. From everyone who I'm hearing in Qatar is that they are fed up with this. And it seems as though, it's the dynamic of what is said publicly and what is said behind closed doors. I just get the sense here that there's much more to go. That's where I keep looking at from all of this. But again, if there's a forced off ramp, or if a deal is struck, if the deal is struck that satisfies the United States, that could change the whole ball game here.
There's talks about Israel, if it continues getting bombed, like Iran seems willing to continue this war. I'm shocked, but it is what it is. Based on what we're seeing so far. If they continue striking Israel and Israel starts to run out of the interceptors, there is talks, and I'm not talking about those fringe people making crazy statements to get clicks. I'm talking about respected analysts, all the way up to David Sachs, that worry that Israel could end up using a tactical nuke. Is that even a discussion right now? I did see a clip where a commentator on TV, some TV host, I'm not sure if you saw it today, with Ben Gvir telling him we should just nuke Iran, use some, I can't remember the name of the nuke, some type of nuke that doesn't destroy buildings but just kills people. But is that Is that even being talked about? Or it's completely out of question? I would believe it's out of question, but I could be wrong.
I think it's out of question. I mean, just
Okay.
I mean, I see no appetite for anything like that. That is coming from the public here, because I mean that is, because I mean, remember, I mean, there's also a longer game for Israel here. What I would say is that I keep going back to, is like, people are hoping this is the last one. What that also means is, people are hoping that, maybe we're within 12 months of, diplomatic ties formally being opened up with Saudi Arabia, or diplomatic ties being formally opened up with the other Gulf states. And people are holding on to, the big one, that it's like, maybe there will be a day in the imminent future in which you can fly nonstop from Tel Aviv to Tehran. You do have people on the ground here holding on to that. So taking a move such as that, I mean, it's like an escalation such as that. I mean, really dashes, that long-term goal that people here in Israel have, which is normalization around the whole region. That's the end game that people here are looking for. So I just I don't detect much of an appetite on that end here.
Oh, I can't believe we're talking about all this. And back to Zelensky, what else did he tell you that's interesting? He's and about all his visits to the region. How significant
Yeah.
is that?
Well, so I mean, one of the things, that I asked him about was the Strait of Hormuz. And I mean, one of the reasons that I wanted to ask him about that, one is he was striking all these deals with the Gulf states. And the full interview is on my X account as well, if you have interest in looking at it. But I
I'll
mean,
check it
it's,
out
and
for sure.
he gave us 45 minutes of his time, so I'm grateful for that. But, he obviously struck all these deals with the Gulf states. And they were asking for perspective on the Strait of Hormuz, and part of that is that he talked about his experience reopening shipping channels when it has come to the Black Sea in dealing with Russia. The big takeaway here is that he actually agrees with the White House, and this is that it is going to take joint cooperation in order to properly secure that waterway. He talked about, I mean, you have a multifaceted element in order to open up the Strait of Hormuz. He said, on the one hand, you're going to need a deep bench full of interceptors in order to be able to deflect any attacks that are coming from anywhere in order to keep the Strait of Hormuz safe. Then you're going to need the convoy system as well. And this is where I keep hearing from everyone that it's going to be tough for the United States Navy to do that all on their own. And they really are going to need allies in order to play a role in that. And then he, talked about a more, he described it as a conjoined network, in which, all of the Gulf states are going to have to be linked together, with one another, whether that's electronic warfare or whether that's with air defense systems in order to protect that entire waterway that exists there. So this goes just beyond one actor coming in and forcing the Strait of Hormuz open. It seems as though, I mean, when you've heard from some of America's allies that they are prepared to step in and help once the fighting in the region starts to die down a little bit. I mean, for what we're gleaning, I mean, it is still very intense in that part of Iran along the Strait of Hormuz. And I mean, unless you're a shipping company with the direct blessing of Iran, I mean, it doesn't seem as though anyone is hazarding sending a ship through there at this point, because I mean, they are still proving they can hit anything going through.
What do you think if you were Trump? What would you do once this deadline ends?
I would say that it's one of these deadlines, has to come with consequence. I would say, because we've gone through a few of these deadlines right now in which the clock has been extended, the clock has been extended, so I mean, is this it? And I'm starting to get the indication that this is the big deadline. One of our colleagues at the Hill spoke with President Trump just a short while ago, Julia Manchester, who's an excellent reporter at the Hill. And I mean, basically, what she said to him, as I'm reading my notes here underneath my makeshift tripod: no infrastructure targets are off the table in Iran. Ground troops are still not ruled off the table. And to an extent, I mean, you've already, I mean, depending on how you want to slice it, I mean, there have been boots on the ground already with
Yeah.
this evac operation here. I mean, that changes the calculus a little bit as well. And then asked point blank if he's optimistic about Iran making a deal. His answer to that was normal people would make a deal. Smart people would make a deal. If they're smart, they would make a deal. So didn't really answer point blank if he was optimistic that a deal was coming on Tuesday or not. I was a
If
little
anything,
surprised.
that's Trump being pessimistic, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was surprised at the Truth Social post earlier today.
Yeah, what do you
Just
make of it? What do you, that was
how blunt it was.
Was it him angry or desperate or both or upset? What do you think was going through his mind? Again, you speak to a lot of correspondents. Many of you have spoken to Trump. What do you think is going through his mind when he made that post?
Well, I mean, it's definitely the most stern one that we've gotten from him yet when it has come towards Iran. I mean, I'm not sure, what's exactly in his head. I kind of leave that to our White House team a little bit more.
Did you ask them?
It does. Yeah. I mean, it does feel as though we're at this collision point, is what I would say. I mean, it does feel as though like Tuesday, something's got to break.
I got into this war. I shouldn't have never got into this war. Netanyahu, screw you for the wrong intelligence. CIA, screw you guys. I'm going to fire some guys. Iran, I'm going to fucking bomb the hell out of you if you don't accept the ceasefire. I made that mistake, but you need to end the war. I think he's like angry at everybody because if in his position, if everything's right, that he didn't want this war, he wanted a quick operation. He's the peace president, etc. This war is becoming one of his worst nightmares, putting him into a corner. And when someone as powerful as Trump, he's a ruthless businessman that controls the world's biggest military. When you put someone like that in a corner, that is not a good thing to do. That is not a good thing to do. And if Iran's expecting China and Russia to come to their rescue like the US and NATO did to Ukraine, it's not going to happen. You're not going to. They're going to support it. Some material there, here and there, some intelligence, but Iran will not get the support of Ukraine. So I don't know what the hell they're thinking. Now, we could be surprised. They could, Iran could be also playing the same game, trying to stretch it till the last minute and then take a deal. We could see that, but every single indicator is pointing to the opposite. They've made up their mind. They're fighting till the end. I just don't know who's making the call. I don't know if it's Mujtaba avenging his family's death, or other members of the IRGC fighting and thinking this is the time to bring down the American empire. Because there's also a lot of people, especially those critical of the US, they said the world's at a crossroads, and this is the one opportunity to hasten the fall of the American empire, weaken the US, increase their debt, stretch their resources, get rid of their munition stockpiles, force them out of the Middle East. There is that mindset going on that this is the time to bring down the American empire. And if Iran's under that delusion, that's dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, I would emphasize, the United States still has a ton of firepower that's out there, but now that said, I mean, everyone is talking about Taiwan. And, it's like, as you've seen some of these security alerts come out of Taiwan over the last couple of weeks, the number of times, that you've seen China testing the perimeters there a little bit. Good amount of assets have been moved from, from that region, back over here to the Middle East. So I mean, it's a different map today than it was a couple of weeks ago. The only thing that I would emphasize, to the public is it's not how wars begin, it's how they end. So I mean, when the Iraq war began, people forget that the American public was pretty overwhelmingly behind the Iraq war. Much of the Western world was behind the Iraq war. And few people had an issue with how that war began and the successes that were found at the beginning. It was the end of the Iraq war. And it was, the years and years of staying in Iraq that people have taken such issue with. So the bottom line is that, what's different about this one is that there's very strict scrutiny coming from the American public from the get-go on this operation, including from within the president's own party. But if it ends in a way, that is going to be viewed as a success in the United States, I mean, that's what's going to define Operation.
How are the polls looking? I haven't been able to follow them. Has it shifted much since the war began? Is he losing support? I know that the odds of a clean sweep for the Democrats in the midterms has increased drastically since the war began. But have you been keeping an eye on those?
Yeah, I'm not as close, over in the United States, but I mean, I have seen, there are a lot of people who are against this operation, and there are plenty, that are for this as well. But I mean, it seems as though, taking the general temperature of the American public, the majority not in favor of this. I mean, I've admittedly been keeping a closer attention, to the polls here in Israel, just trying to take the temperature here. And I mean, they've largely stayed rock solid, with the Israeli public, right around that 80% number since the beginning of this. And I'd add even further that, I mean, most everyone who I've met here in Israel who is not in favor of this war has largely been a transplant, someone from the United States or from Western Europe, so I mean that has remained rock solid here, I would say.
Um, what about the support on the war in Lebanon? How's that in Israel? How's it compared to the
Oh
support for the
yeah.
war in Iran?
Yeah, that's a trickier theater. Um, Hezbollah has really kept a lot of pressure on northern Israel since the beginning of this. I mean, since February, and I mean, I think people. I've been up at that border a lot since October 7th, and I've
Interesting.
met just so many people who have been really fed up with the situation in Lebanon, and want it ended with a conclusion, because I mean, like in a lot of those towns in the north, kids have been out of school, livelihoods have been ended, so you actually have a lot of people in northern Israel who have, for the last couple of years been pushing, end this threat from Hezbollah so that we can go back to our homes, so we can go back to our livelihoods. If you look elsewhere in Israel, I mean, Lebanon has just so historically, for a lot of people here, I mean, it has just been, a quicksand case. I mean, it's one of those situations in which, I mean, the Lebanon theater can go on for a long time. So as you have people expecting Iran to go on into the summer here in Israel, I mean, there are people who are expecting Lebanon to go even longer and longer. And I mean, you've heard some of the rhetoric that has come from the defense ministry here in Israel. I don't know if you followed it much, but I mean, they're not going to let people in southern Lebanon go back to their homes
That
for
hit
for a
me.
while.
Robert, can I ask? I want to tell you what I feel about this because I've been one of the
Mhm.
people saying that. Look, I'm very critical of what Israel did in Gaza. Very critical. I understand Israel wanting to weaken Iran makes strategic sense. I'm very critical of them bombing Syria, especially after Al Shara is trying to normalize things, etc. And he's doing the diplomatic tours. So he's trying to do right by his country, as much as you might hate him. And I was understanding of Israeli strikes on Lebanon because Hezbollah is the one declaring war again and again against Israel. They're the ones that struck Israel after October 7th. They did it again afterwards. And now they did it again after the ceasefire. They started this war. They dragged Lebanon into this war for the sake of Iran. Without Hezbollah, Lebanon would be much better off. And I like to see the coordination, indirect coordination between the Lebanese government and the Israeli government. So I was optimistic. And I know there's a lot of people in Lebanon that worry about, and around the region, but Lebanon is precisely, that worry about them becoming like Palestine or the whole greater Israel theory or the fears of greater Israel ambitions. And I would tell those people, I'd be like, look, and I spoke to a lot of people in Israel. I'd be like, I really don't think Israel wants Lebanese territory. They do want to live in peace. Palestine is different. I believe in a two-state solution, but I understand for a lot of Israelis it's different, and that ship has sailed pretty much. In Lebanon, I think they just want to get rid of Hezbollah. And then I saw that coordination where the Lebanese government started turning on Hezbollah, despite them militarily being a lot weaker. Okay. Then the defense minister made that statement, and that just
Mhm.
shook me. That was a bad day for me. For him to say two things in south of the Litani, Lebanese people, civilians, cannot return to their homes. Over 600,000 people in a country with a population of what,
Right.
3, 4 million, cannot go back to their homes. Instead of coming up with a better plan, and that's after the war, not during, after the war, why not say they can come to their homes, but we will remain there for a prolonged period of time with the Lebanese army to ensure no weapons go through? I'd understand. But to say to all people, you can't return when the war ends, and then to add to it that the villages near the border, they'll be destroyed the same way we did in Gaza.
Yeah.
I even asked Conricus the story, John Conricus, and
Mhm.
he told me, he said the same thing. He's like, Mario, we disagreed on the villages on the border. He's like, Mario, I think the right thing to do is create a buffer zone, get rid of these buildings. We've tried with Hezbollah for so many years, we have no choice. But he also said Lebanese people should be able to return to their homes after the war ends. We should not expel them out of their homes even after the war ends. So that was even Conricus' position, and he's relatively, I would say, he's more on the hawkish territory and on the hawkish side of this argument. So I was just shocked by that statement. Now I want to get your thoughts on how many people in Israel agree with it, what you think about it, but more importantly, how many Israelis agree with that statement and that policy, if it is policy.
It's just, so I mean, a couple of things to that. One, I mean, I was pretty surprised, by how stern the defense minister was. 600,000 people can't return to their homes, destroying much of the infrastructure that exists down towards the south. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, there's no two ways about it. What I would say, when it comes to the Israeli public perspective here, there is also a degree of fed-upness when it comes to Lebanon that, I mean, at the end of the day, Hezbollah is not supposed to be operating south of the Litani River. Lebanese government was supposed to play a role in disarming Hezbollah. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it's very clear neither of those two things happen. Hezbollah is still south of the Litani River, and Lebanese government did not disarm Hezbollah. So there is a degree of fed-upness, that has come from the Israeli public. It seems as though we live in a moment here in Israel in which people are like, this is it, just get the threats out of here. Just get this over with, and then maybe there is a bright light at the end of the tunnel, that there is possibility for peace and coexistence here. Lebanon is where I hear people say, but on the other hand, Lebanon has caused so many problems in the past. How many times has it become a quagmire in the past? How many people, in Israel have served in the IDF and say, I served in Lebanon? I mean, it's a lot of people, and it just happens again and again. It's a problem that keeps recurring. So I mean, it's it's like a 6 of one, half dozen to the other kind of situation.
I won't reframe the question. I'll kind of ask it differently. I agree with everything you've said. Now, but why? So everything you said is accurate. Again, I want to repeat, I do agree. But why say to all Lebanese people, and by the way, a lot of Lebanese people are also fed up with Hezbollah.
Yeah.
They really upset at Hezbollah. The Lebanese government for the first time said we want to disarm Hezbollah. It's illegal for anyone to support Hezbollah. Hezbollah should get rid of their arms. They tried to expel the Iranian ambassador, couldn't. Some of them are calling for the arrest of Hezbollah members. That would have. I went to interview Lebanese politicians about a year ago. The amount of security we had to have, and they had, because they feared Hezbollah. First, they told me we would never speak up against Hezbollah years ago. And now they're speaking up, but they have significant security because Hezbollah has assassinated a lot of Lebanese politicians. So there is that shift within Lebanon, okay? Now, but when you make statements like this, as fed up as you are, when you make statements like this, you turn the Lebanese people that are like, we hate Hezbollah, we don't get rid of them, to be like, hold on. Maybe the argument that Hezbollah is there to deter Israel annexing our territory, which a lot of people that hate Hezbollah say that. We hate Hezbollah, but they are deterring Lebanon from becoming a Palestine. That's the argument they make. After a statement by the defense minister, that gives credence to that argument. It gives weight to that argument. It makes them reconsider their opposition to Hezbollah. A better solution, and again, I don't know if he means that statement, but why not have, I understand they're fed up, have a buffer zone, and then have Israeli troops in southern Lebanon. I'll get a lot of hate for this. Have Israeli troops in southern Lebanon until Hezbollah is fully disarmed, but let Lebanese people go back to their homes and increase security. Because the worries if Lebanese people can't return to their homes is their homes won't be their homes anytime ever. And they go back to the Nakba, etc., as examples.
Quite possible. Yeah. And especially, I mean, one of the defense minister's statements here in Israel specifically referenced Gaza. I mean, I've got the quote here. I mean, all houses and villages near the Lebanese border will be destroyed according to the model of Rafah in Gaza to permanently remove the threats near the border to residents of the north. I mean, I was really surprised, by how forthright they were, paralleling this to Gaza.
You're going to surprise, Robert. That was an insensitive way of describing it, but you know what? I disagree with this, but I understand it because they need that buffer zone so Hezbollah doesn't keep striking because maybe they accept they can never disarm Hezbollah fully, maybe. Or that's just security because people in the north are fed up. That statement actually bothers me less. And by the way, Conricus agrees with that statement. I don't, but I understand it. But that statement bothers me less than the entire territory up south of the Litani. People can't go back to their homes. That 620,000 people. That one is the one that just doesn't make logical sense if the goal is security. It's just too extreme. Have you spoken to Israeli people about this, or haven't had the chance?
And it's like, to your point, I mean, that's a massive amount of land. I don't think people realize that. I mean, that's something like 320 square miles of land, that people won't be able to return to, for the foreseeable future. I mean, for the most part, it's this 6-to-1, half dozen to the other kind of, perspective that I keep getting from people. On the one hand, it's like, do what you got to do in order to remove the threat, because this keeps happening. I mean, people here in Israel, just by and large, just don't believe that the Lebanese government can deliver. Is what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with them. They've tried many times. They've tried. Lebanese government is not able to. So Israel doing that for them. That's why with the destruction of Lebanon, I'm like, what can you expect if Israel wants to get rid of Hezbollah? They've tried for decades. Hezbollah keeps attacking Israel. Israel wants to live in peace. If their country or any group did that to the US, that country would be decimated. That group would be decimated. So I understand that. That the line to me became, I understand, don't agree. Big differences. I agree, by the way, with Israel's right to defend itself by striking Hezbollah. I understand and agree with that. But just that massive territory, 620,000 people. Like, imagine you leave your home and can never come back. Just a normal villager with their family, their kids. Fucking hell, that's extreme. Not after the,
it's huge.
Not during the, after. It is, exactly. Like, even Russia, when they invaded Ukrainian territory, people could go back to their homes. Ukrainians, Russians, etc. It's different.
Right. It's a huge amount of land. It's a huge number of people, who are going to be impacted by all of this. And I know there's a diplomatic push that is ongoing right now in order to get something resolved. I mean, I don't know about this one, and so I mean, it's just like, and part of the deal, with some of these diplomatic pushes is, direct dialogue between Lebanon and Israel, which is significant, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, from the geopolitical scheme of things, it is significant. I detect very little appetite here from the Israeli public to even bother dealing with the Lebanese government, because it's just, again, it comes back to, Hezbollah was not supposed to be south of Litani. Hezbollah was supposed to be disarmed. Well, very clearly, I mean, how intense it has been in northern Israel for the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's the element of the story that doesn't make its way back to the United States as much as possible. Just how constant the bombardments are from Hezbollah, how massive some of these barrages are. I mean,
huge.
Many of us assumed that after Hassan Nasrallah was taken out and after the pager incident, that Hezbollah was pretty crippled. Very clearly not quite the case. Very clearly, they still have quite a bit of capabilities yet.
Robert, first time we speak. Thank you so much for coming on. Also, much respect to your work. I'll check that interview with Zelensky, and thank you for coming on, man. I've been watching you for a while. Really appreciate it.
I thank you for having me. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, man.